Welcome back to Tiger Moon. Today we're here with part 5, the final chapter of The Haunted Village. In the previous episode, you heard the terrifying story of Yasser's possession and everything Mr. Molai did to help him. Life in the village had almost returned to normal. Until one day, when Ramin traveled to the district to request a few days of leave, he unexpectedly ran into the doctor. If you're ready, let's hear the final chapter. The doctor and I returned to the village together. Even Ismail seemed genuinely happy to see him. During the ride back, Ismail immediately started complaining about all his aches and pains. The doctor smiled and promised to examine him that very night at the clinic. When we arrived, I insisted that the doctor come stay at my place. He politely refused. The clinic needs attention first. Still, I invited him to dinner that evening with Mohammed and me. He gladly accepted, then headed toward the school hill. I stopped by the grocery store near the mosque, bought everything we needed for dinner, and went home. Mohammed was outside in the courtyard with the little goat. The moment he heard the doctor had returned, he became excited. He left to take his mother to the clinic. That left only me and the little goat. I immediately started preparing dinner. I washed enough rice for 4 people, then cleaned the chicken I'd bought from the store. Of course, actually cooking it was Mohammed's job. The most I could manage was boiling an egg. After everything was ready, I ate lunch, then lay beside the heater and fell asleep. While I was sleeping, I heard the front door close. The little goat immediately began bleating loudly. Its cries slowly pulled me out of my sleep. The bedroom door opened. Mohammed walked inside. Something about him felt different. His appearance suggested he had been in a fight. What happened? Did someone hit you? He quickly shook his head. Without saying a word, he walked to the kitchen sink and started washing his face. He took so long that I lost interest. I closed my eyes and fell asleep again. Several hours later, the village muezzin's terrible voice woke me. The house was completely empty. Outside it was already dark. I called Mohammed several times. No answer. Just as I started wondering where he had gone, I heard running water. It was coming from the kitchen. I walked in and found the faucet still running. Confused, I turned it off. It was unlike Mohammed to leave it open. Dinner still had to be prepared. I reached for my phone. Just then, the front gate opened. Mohammed walked into the courtyard. I hurried outside. He looked cheerful. He patted the little goat affectionately, then came inside. His mood had completely changed. When I asked what had happened earlier, he looked confused. Nothing happened. There was a small problem. It's been taken care of. Relieved, I asked him to start cooking dinner. He happily agreed. Still, something felt strange. About 2 hours later, the doctor finally arrived. He looked completely exhausted. With his usual dry sense of humor, he said, "You invite someone to dinner, but you forget they actually have to get here." "I've been on my feet for 3 straight days," Mohammed laughed. The poor doctor hadn't even opened the clinic. The villagers attacked him before he got inside. I was one of them. The doctor sighed and apologized for being away so long. Mohammed tried changing the subject. Instead, he accidentally made it worse. He asked how the doctor's mother had died. It was almost midnight when dinner was finally served. Halfway through the meal, the doctor casually mentioned what Mohammed had been doing that afternoon. Something immediately felt wrong. I asked him to explain. The doctor smiled. "Oh, nothing. This poor guy was with me until the evening." I froze. The chicken remained in my mouth. "The whole time?" The doctor nodded. "He didn't even have time to go to the bathroom." I slowly turned toward Mohammed. "But you came home this afternoon." Only then did the doctor notice Mohammed trying to signal me with his eyes. I put my food down. "Look, I'm not the same person I was 7 months ago. I can handle the truth now. So tell me, what happened this afternoon?" Now even the doctor looked curious. After a long silence, Mohammed finally spoke. "Honestly, I don't know who came into the house, but it wasn't me. I stayed with the doctor until evening." The doctor nearly choked. Food went down the wrong way. He bent over the table, coughing violently. Mohammed quickly rushed over and slapped him between the shoulders. Eventually, the coughing stopped. After catching his breath, the doctor looked at me. "Tell me, when you saw him, were you asleep or were you fully awake? Are you absolutely sure it wasn't a dream?" I frowned. "Doctor, I woke up. The kitchen faucet was still running. Before I could finish, glass shattered. All 3 of us rushed into the courtyard. Someone had smashed the basement window with a rock. Mohammed ran into the alley. I searched the basement. Nothing. I couldn't even find the rock. Thankfully, the chickens were unharmed. Judging by Mohammed's expression, he hadn't found anyone outside either. Still, I asked. He shook his head. "I didn't see a single person." We returned to finish dinner. As expected, there was too much food. Neither Haji Yadola nor the mysterious 4th guest ever came. The next day was Friday, but the doctor still had work to do. So none of us stayed awake very long. Around 2 o'clock in the morning, I got up to use the bathroom. A freezing wind blew through the courtyard, just as it always did. Even in the middle of summer, as I stepped back outside, an overwhelming feeling of fear suddenly washed over me, the kind of fear that arrives without any warning. I hurried toward the stairs, wanting nothing more than to reach the safety of my room. Then, out of the corner of my eye, something sprinted across the wall and leaped onto the rooftop. At first, I thought it was a thief. Then I looked up. It wasn't. It was a goat, the same kind of goat I had seen near the hill, the same goat Haji Adola said the Sheikh's father had once seen. With Mr. Molaye's special oil, the blood froze in my veins. I screamed. The doctor and Muhammad rushed outside. By then, Muhammad was almost used to these things. He helped me back inside. The doctor still wanted to hear every detail, but I was trembling so badly, I crawled beneath my blanket and fell asleep. Every time I saw those things, the exhaustion afterward became unbearable. Only sleep could help. The next morning, the three of us walked to the clinic together. I was still weak. After hearing everything, the doctor suggested I move out of that house and stay at the clinic instead. Mohammed agreed. That very same day, we moved all of my belongings. Then we visited Akbar Sadeghi to thank him for letting me stay in his house. No matter how much I insisted, he refused to accept any money. So I thanked him once again and left that haunted house forever. The demolition of the old school had finally been completed. A few days later, several trucks unloaded stacks of bricks. The doctor looked toward the hill and sighed. No one knows how many years it will take before the new school is finished. Honestly, it didn't matter to me anymore. The clinic was a much better place to stay. The days passed slowly in the village. Eventually, the day I had to leave finally arrived. The doctor insisted that instead of spending my vacation in the city, I should stay with him and explore the village. But I wasn't that foolish anymore. I went on a 13-day leave. I was supposed to return on the 12th day, although if I hadn't returned at all, no one probably would have noticed. I came back looking exhausted once again. Trying to cheer me up, the doctor smiled. Tomorrow we'll celebrate Sizda Bedar by the river. It'll be fun. The following day, heavy rain poured from morning until late afternoon, around 3 o'clock. The rain finally stopped. The clouds drifted away. The doctor packed everything into 2 bags, together. We headed toward the river, the very same place where Mohammed and I had gone fishing before. Honestly, it was a wonderful day. For the first time in a long while, I finally felt alive again. We enjoyed ourselves so much that we completely lost track of time. Night had already fallen when we packed everything and started walking back toward the school. I kept glancing toward the old graves, but there wasn't a single grave-born creature in sight. As I looked around curiously, a strange sound came from inside the school ruins. I looked at the doctor. "Are there workers inside?" He smirked. "Workers? They barely come here on normal days. You think they'd show up on a holiday?" "What happened?" Before I could answer, he heard the noise himself. Carefully, he peeked over the broken wall, then whispered, "Ramin, there's someone inside." A thief. The memory of that fishing trip flashed through my mind. The same night Mohammed and I had seen the enormous shadow standing on the school wall, I whispered back, "A thief? This isn't a bank. It's one of them. It's a jinn." The doctor placed a finger against his lips. "Shh." Before I realized what he was doing, he started climbing over the wall. My entire body tensed, but there was no stopping him. He disappeared silently into the ruins. With no other choice, I set my backpack on the ground and followed him. The digging noises were coming from the far end of the collapsed building. The doctor moved forward as quietly as a police officer approaching a suspect. Meanwhile, I waited for the jinn to attack at any second. Remember, the school no longer had a roof. Most of its walls were gone as well. Suddenly, the doctor's foot struck a piece of metal. The mysterious figure instantly realized someone was there. When it stood up, it looked nearly 2 meters tall, but to our surprise, instead of attacking, it ran. The doctor chased after it. Just before reaching the broken wall, the figure stumbled and crashed to the ground. Its scream echoed through the darkness. I grabbed a loose brick from the ground and rushed over. In the middle of that dark night, the doctor was sitting on the stranger's chest. He looked up at me in complete disbelief. "Rashid, the village's former teacher. The terrifying creature was just a man." Rashid screamed in pain. He had badly twisted his ankle. The doctor calmly told him to relax. A moment later, he reset the joint little by little. Rashid stopped screaming. With our help, he managed to stand. Without saying another word, he walked with us toward the clinic. After putting away our things, we sat together in the clinic's resting room. The doctor looked at Rashid. "Where have you been? You disappeared for an entire year. And now I find you digging holes like a grave robber. Rashid sat quietly on the bed, like a helpless child. I can't go back. Someone's after me. Immediately, Mohammed's old words came back to my mind. The things he'd once said about Rashid betraying Akbar. The doctor questioned him over and over. But Rashid refused to answer properly. Finally, I decided to force the truth out. I slowly pulled my phone from my pocket. Maybe I should call Akbar. He was looking for you. The moment I said Akbar's name, Rashid lunged forward like an enraged bull. The doctor stopped him immediately. What happened with Akbar? Tell us the truth, you little idiot. The funny thing about the doctor was that his vocabulary changed depending on who he was talking to. At last, Rashid gave up and he started talking. It was all about the treasure. Actually, it's better if you hear it in his own words. It was about 20 days before Nowruz. Akbar came to me. He told me about an old rumor, something hidden underground. Until then, the only thing we'd ever done together was hunting. I knew nothing about buried treasure. At first, he claimed he wanted to share the discovery because we were friends. But once he showed me the place, I realized the truth. He simply couldn't do it alone. About 200 meters beyond the Qanat's exit, there was an old ventilation shaft. The tunnel itself was blocked, but a narrow opening had been dug into the side of the shaft. Only someone tall and very thin could squeeze through it. I happened to be both. That's exactly why Akbar came to me. He tied a rope around my leg. If the tunnel collapsed, he'd pull me back. Of course, we both knew that if it really caved in, not even a tractor could get me out. So I crawled inside. It was narrow, it was dark, but it seemed stable. After crawling about 3 meters, I reached a small underground chamber. Later, Akbar told me it wasn't concrete, it was ancient saruj. I didn't know anything about that. In the middle of the chamber, I found 4 large clay jars. I smashed one open. It contained nothing but ashes and dirt. I still don't know what had been stored inside, but breathing suddenly became difficult. Then I noticed something. 2 of the jars were different. They were completely sealed. I decided to tie them to the rope so Akbar could pull them out. But suddenly, I became terrified. What if, once he had the treasure, he left me there to die? So I told him to loosen the rope. I tied both jars along my legs and dragged them through the tunnel myself. It nearly killed me, but at least I trusted myself more than I trusted Akbar. It took almost half an hour to crawl back out. Akbar kept asking what I was doing, but I ignored him. I was afraid he'd smash my skull with the club he was holding. Finally, we opened one of the jars. It was filled with gold coins, and the other was packed with silver. The look in Akbar's eyes was enough to frighten the devil himself. We carried the jars back to the school and counted the coins. There wasn't a neat number of them. To my surprise, Akbar left all of the jars in my care and walked away. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept pacing around the hall, afraid he might come back and attack me. A while later, he returned. He said he had found someone who could evaluate the coins. He slipped 1 gold coin and 1 silver coin into his pocket, then left again. The following night, he came back carrying a box of sweets. The moment he told me what the coins were supposedly worth, I realized he thought I was a complete fool. Even if we had melted the coins down and sold the gold itself, we would have received far more than 25 million. He claimed the coins had almost no historical value. According to him, they were only about 150 years old. Around the same time, 2 nearby villages had supposedly fought a tribal war. To this day, I don't know whether that war was real or just another one of Akbar's lies. About a week before I disappeared, I returned to the village and told everyone about the grave-born creatures, but I warned them not to tell anyone. On the night Akbar was supposed to bring the buyer, I hid 30 gold coins inside my pockets. Then I buried the rest beneath the floor of the school hall. After that, I escaped through the back of the village and headed for the highway. The first time I sold one of those coins, I realized just how dishonest Akbar really was. From that moment on, I never intended to return openly. I destroyed my SIM card and built a new life in the city. 6 months ago, I finally came back for the rest of the treasure, but opening the school's old lock took longer than expected. I had barely started digging when I heard the front gate, so I ran. I almost got caught that night. If you want, call Akbar, but honestly, it would be a shame if all that treasure ended up in his hands. After Rashid finished speaking, the doctor remained silent for a moment. So, all those stories about the graveborn were just stories? Rashid ran a hand through his hair. The hall smelled terrible, and strange crying could always be heard. But I never actually saw anything. Those things aren't ghosts. They can't walk through wall. And ever since I left the village, nothing unusual has happened to me. If you ask me, bottle all those stories and sell them to city people. Let them buy cursed bottles if they want. Rashid burst into laughter. The doctor immediately silenced him with a stern look. I still had dozens of questions. One thing, the school had been abandoned for all this time. So why did you return tonight? Rashid shrugged. I don't live here. How would I know the perfect time? I even came once during winter. The school had collapsed under the snow. You know what they say, wolves go crazy in the snow. I laughed. I've never heard that one. Rashid asked the doctor to help recover the jars. The doctor refused, but I agreed to help. The doctor looked at me with complete disappointment. After everything I'd gone through, I figured the village should finally give me something in return. That same night, Rashid and I went back to the school. We dug exactly where he remembered hiding the jars. Nothing. No jars. No coins. I looked at Rashid. He looked completely crushed. So, you were fooling me? He sat down on the ground. I swear, I buried them right here. Akbar must have found them. No matter how many times he swore, I couldn't believe him. That very night, he climbed into the old paykan he had parked near the road and disappeared. The next day, I told Muhammad everything. He smiled mysteriously. Bad deeds never end well, but thank God, at least Akbar got fooled. That night, Muhammad came to the clinic. He reached into his pocket and placed an old gold coin on the table. I found the jars. The night I chased him, I already suspected it was Rashid. Then I noticed fresh dirt on the floor. I knew something had been buried there. So while Ramin was away on leave, I dug the place up and found the jars. The doctor laughed with excitement. He slapped Muhammad on the shoulder. You clever fox, Muhammad smiled. I buried the jars at our house. I don't plan on selling them. I just didn't want them to end up wasted. I never had the courage to ask Muhammad for a few of those coins. Honestly, I'm sure he would have shared them, but because he'd done it while I was away, I simply couldn't bring myself to ask. After moving out of that house, nothing happened. Absolutely nothing. The new school still wasn't finished by the end of June. After a 20-day leave, I received a call ordering me to report to the education department in my hometown. I became a courier. They gave me a motorcycle. My job was delivering official documents from one office to another. When summer ended, they decided to keep me there permanently. After all, the new teacher from the city had already taken my place in the village. Near the end of my military service, I visited the village one last time. The doctor was preparing to leave as well. He planned to leave Iran completely. That final night, we were guests at Haji Yadola's house. After that, I never returned to Dek again. And that was the story of my time as a soldier teacher and everything I went through in search of an easier military service. Well, that's where the story of DEHK comes to an end. Thank you to our writer, and thank you for staying with us until the very end. As the poet says, my sorrow is that on the day of farewell, there is no one to pour a bowl of water behind me out of loyalty. May God protect you all. With respect, Tiger Moon. I found the jars. The night I chased him, I already suspected it was Rashid. Then I noticed fresh dirt on the floor. I knew something had been buried there. So while Ramin was away on leave, I dug the place up and found the jars. The doctor laughed with excitement. He slapped Muhammad on the shoulder. You clever fox. Muhammad smiled. I buried the jars at our house. I don't plan on selling them. I just didn't want them to end up wasted. I never had the courage to ask Muhammad for a few of those coins. Honestly, I'm sure he would have shared them, but because he'd done it while I was away, I simply couldn't bring myself to ask. After moving out of that house, nothing happened. Absolutely nothing. The new school still wasn't finished by the end of June. After a 20-day leave, I received a call ordering me to report to the education department in my hometown. I became a courier. They gave me a motorcycle. My job was delivering official documents from one office to another. When summer ended, they decided to keep me there permanently. After all, the new teacher from the city had already taken my place in the village. Near the end of my military service, I visited the village one last time. The doctor was preparing to leave as well. He planned to leave Iran completely that final night. We were guests at Haji Adola's house. After that, I never returned to Dahak again. And that was the story of my time as a soldier teacher and everything I went through in search of an easier military service. Well, that's where the story of Dahak comes to an end. Thank you to our writer, and thank you for staying with us until the very end. As the poet says, my sorrow is that, on the day of farewell, there is no one to pour a bowl of water behind me out of loyalty. May God protect you all. With respect, Tiger Moon.